They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
Bioshock is a game that needs no introduction. The 2007 first-person shooter, developed and published by 2K Games, was met with universal acclaim for its narrative, gameplay, atmosphere, basically everything you need for a good game. As one of my personal favorite games of all time, I thought it appropriate to take a deep dive, analyze its game design, and discuss why it is so unique. By taking a look at three crucial aspects of game design, those being narrative design, environmental storytelling, and agency or player choice, we see why Bioshock is a unique experience, no matter the player. Beginning with narrative design, Bioshock begins by setting up the usual video game tropes once we land in Rapture, an underwater city where the story takes place. These include a guide, a motivation, and setting up the silent protagonist whose name is Jack. The guide is a friendly Irish-sounding man named Atlas, who informs the player that his family is trapped by the leader of Rapture, a man named Andrew Ryan, causing the player to want to save them. This introduction immediately sets up Ryan as the antagonist and Atlas as the sympathetic underdog. As the game goes on, the player eventually finds the sub with Atlas's family, Patrick and Moira, inside, only for Ryan to blow it up. This causes the player's motivation to switch from saving to murderous revenge after Atlas kindly asks us to kill Ryan. Eventually, Jack makes it to Ryan's office, where he is informed of some shocking news. Ryan informs Jack that he has been no more than a mere slave to Atlas, obeying his every wish when Atlas uses the phrase, "Would you kindly," which he used throughout most of the game. After killing Ryan, Atlas uses the phrase again, forcing Jack to hand control of Rapture to Atlas, or, as he reveals, is actually a guy named Frank Fontaine, a character presumed to have been dead. Fontaine then, of course, tries to kill Jack, only for Jack to be saved. He is freed from his brainwashing, as evidenced by Fontaine asking him to get his head stepped on, and the player not doing that, and eventually tracks down and kills Fontaine, finally free and making the choice himself. The genius behind Bioshock's narrative design is that it uses tropes of video games and flips them on their head. For example, in a typical FPS, the player mindlessly follows an objective while that game still lets the player believe that they are in control and fighting for something greater. For example, in a game like Call of Duty. Bioshock, however, flips this idea on its head, and it is revealed that Jack had no choice, you the player never had a choice, being forced to mindlessly follow an objective and do a horrible man's bidding who deceived you. Everything you had done was meaningless, and you unintentionally helped the bad guy win. That is until another choice, one that the player could actually control, helped save the day. But we'll talk about that later. Moving on to environmental storytelling. While Bioshock's main story itself is a masterpiece, its environmental storytelling is just as good. As we progress through the game, the player will notice certain obstacles, such as security cameras, drones, turrets, vending machines, and more, which at first seem to be generic video game enemy design, however upon closer inspection, tell the tale of why Rapture is the way that it is. Like, why does this quote-unquote utopia have so many guns, turrets, vending machines, with health items, and more? Well, with some help from audio logs, in short, it is revealed that there was a civil war of sorts between Ryan and Fontaine. This perfectly explains why there are so many turrets, cameras, guns, etc. Even the audio logs themselves get an explanation to their existence through the numerous posters in Rapture. These posters serve as another important aspect of environmental storytelling, examples of which can be found in the Who is Atlas poster and Patrick and Moira. These posters help plant seeds which linger in the backs of players' minds as they realize that we, the player, also do not really know Atlas, but we are following him anyway. There is also a poster of two dancers named Patrick and Moira, which, if the player can find, plants a seed of confusion if they remember that Atlas's family are also named Patrick and Moira. These posters hint towards Atlas being deceitful, adding more layers to his character, which can be found in the environments. Rapture is one of the greatest settings that I have ever experienced in a video game, as it is able to tell compelling stories while also adding to the main story, all through its environment. Last but not least, we come to agency or player choice. As mentioned before, there is one choice that the player is allowed to make, which influences the end of the story: save or harvest little sisters. Saving the little sisters is technically optional with one exception, that one exception determining the ending you get if you do not go after the others. However, going after the others is highly recommended, as Adam, the currency the little sisters provide, is crucial to upgrading Jack's plasmids, which are special genetic powers he gets at the beginning of the game. It's a whole thing. This mechanic helps shake things up, as Bioshock is a relatively linear game. Throwing some choice in there keeps the combat and exploration engaging, while also providing players with another motivator: saving the little sisters and defeating the big daddies, their protectors, as defeating one yields great rewards. The ways in which the player takes down these big daddies is also completely up to them. Players can utilize the numerous mechanics available to them, such as hacking turrets, drones, setting up mines, or just going in guns blazing. All of these choices are completely viable strategies, as long as the player is smart. The agency presented in Bioshock also affects the story, as if Jack saves the little sisters, the good ending plays, whereas if he harvests them, the bad ending plays. This element of Bioshock emphasizes the importance of choice, as one simple harvest of a little sister may cause the player to get the bad ending. Something else I like about the agency is that it cannot be undone by a simple save reload and different singular choice. An example that comes to mind for me is something like Far Cry 3, where the entire ending is determined by one choice. If the player harvests every little sister, they need to basically replay the entire game in order to achieve the good ending. A fitting punishment, I'd say, for someone sadistic enough to harvest little sisters. Initially, I believed that these three elements worked exclusively in order to make the story of Bioshock so unique. However, looking back on what I discovered, it is the blend of all these design aspects that makes Bioshock the modern masterpiece that it is. Narrative design, telling stories to players through the environment while also being affected by agency, the environment telling a compelling story while also adding to the main narrative and keeping combat engaging and full of choice, and agency throughout the entire game affecting the narrative in the end and allowing for so many unique combat experiences in the environment. Bioshock will always hold a special place in my heart, and it is one of the only games that I have actually played all the way through twice. And that is how special it truly is.
In the end, what was your reward? You never said, but I think I know. A family.